Well, I think there is a great deal of contempt for men in our society, and I don't mean it in a kind of touchy-feely way, like as if I sense it. I'm talking about in our institutions. I've really had a good look over the years at our educational, legal, social service, health, and family court. Worst of all, bias against men is pandemic in our society.
Well, I mean, certainly when it comes to messy divorces and custody disputes, it's quite clear that even a model father will not get custody if a woman simply wants the children, at least.
Or other family members or whatever. So men get about 6%.
Right. So I was 4% out. It's getting better as the show goes on. You mentioned health, and I know that some men's groups, for example, have said, look, breast cancer gets this amount of funding and this amount of care, but prostate cancer is really minimized. But is that a fair comparison?
That's not the health issue I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
If a 12-year-old girl comes into a hospital for any reason whatsoever, a broken wrist, a tooth knocked out, whatever, she goes through a protocol and she's asked if she's been subject to sex abuse now or in the past. But not boys. So I'm wondering, is that because 12-year-old boys have never had sex abuse in the past or in the present or may in the future? Age of 12, by the way, it's almost equal. You know, boys and girls, when they're quite young, are almost equally abused. Yeah. When older women come in, you're going to be questioning them if they're being abused by their children or their, you know. Yes, we are. And what about older men? Will you also be questioning them? And suddenly he said, evasion hit the air. Yes, and so I'm not.
But media, there does seem to be, I don't think it's just anecdotal, this constant mocking and marginalizing of men as fathers, men as husbands. It can be in a gentle, quite funny way, like Modern Family. I don't think that's harmful, but it can be quite sinister as well.
I think it can be. I think that if you look culturally at, if you added up all the commercials, the sitcoms, the movies, you see trends. One of the trends is to laugh at men's incompetence or their thick-headedness or their density or their inability to parent without tutoring.
Suzanne Banker had head spinning last week with a provocative article claiming successful women are waging a war on men that has resulted in lazy guys who aren't interested in marriage. And angry, powerful women who are still playing the victim. In your article, The War on Men, you blame women for the existence of lazy men. And you say, and you also say that because of a lot of women, there are far fewer men today that want to get married. So why are you blaming women?
Our fault that they're lazy?
So what I've done here is basically, I'm asking women to sort of shine a spotlight on what's been going on in the last 40 years. We talk a lot about the rise of women and how men need to so-called man up or step up to the plate or what have you. And what I'm saying is, you know, today's generation of women are being raised very differently than any other generation before them. They're told to never depend on a man, sort of to do this, you know, I am woman, hear me roar. And what has happened there is that I think by being raised with that mentality, they're carrying it with them when they go into their love relationships. So that it's always, it's more contentious than it's supposed to be, essentially.
And I think it's not an exaggeration to say not particularly good at the moment. Marriage is declining, women's happiness is declining, the number of women on antidepressants over the age of 40 is like 25% or something like that. And men are alienated and frustrated and avoiding what they see as the dangerous state-enforced institution of marriage. Birth rates are declining. There just seems to be a lot of frustration and fear and hostility. What's your sense of where things are?
So I agree with everything you said. Of course, that's basically what I do, what I write about. And I blame it on, I mean, of course, there are various reasons, various ways in which we got here. But there's no question that the number one culprit is feminism, and that we are now reaping the results of 40 years of a very steady and destructive message that effectively argues for a faux kind of equality between women and men. And there are two basic tenets, if you will, of feminism. One is that women are victims. That's the number one theme of every feminist argument. And if you're starting with that, I mean, every single issue that they deal with ultimately comes down to that so-called fact. And if you're looking at it through that lens, you're going to obviously come up with a certain viewpoint that may differ from people who don't see women as victims. That's number one. Number two is that men and women are essentially the same, that biology is bogus, and that if society would just let us be who we really are and take away all those so-called stereotypes or generalizations about sex and gender, male, female, then we would see that we are perfectly equal and would have, by equal meaning, the same, and would thus act the same, behave the same, treat sex the same, look at marriage the same, work the same. All of these issues that are so big and in the media all the time are all filtered through this false.
All over the place.
Oh, well, let's bring in Susan Patton, a.k.a. the Princeton mom. She gained notoriety for imploring young women to lock down their future husbands while still in college. You remember this? We talked about this. Good morning. Thanks for being with us.
What a pleasure to be here on
Right,
Father's Day.
Some of these tweets here is from Tasha. She wrote in, everyone knows we only need mothers. Why do we even need Father's Day? Fathers are useless. Hashtag end Father's Day.
Oh, come on. Just
Useless?
more of this nasty feminist rhetoric that they're not just interested in ending Father's Day, they're interested in ending men. That's really what they want. It's absurd for them to say that Father's Day is a creation of male oppression. It's ridiculous.
But why is it good for women? I mean, there's a reason that there are more women living in poverty now than at any time in my lifetime is because there are fewer married women. I mean, when you crush men, you hurt women.
Without a doubt. And we're obviously not talking about celebrating the deadbeat dads or celebrating the men who abandon their families. We're talking about men who love their children, who provide for their families, and who daily set an example for young men, for young boys, about what it is.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so what do you make of these feminists, these professional feminists, as Tucker calls them, outraged over this group of men getting together to talk about things like finances? In fact, at this event, they had female speakers and all sorts of different races.
Folks. Suzanne, why are they acting out then if that's the case?
Okay, so the biggest divide between what's called the MRAs, the men's rights activists, and feminist activism is really very simple, and that is that feminists blame all social ills, all the problems that we have really, especially regarding marriage and the family, education, jobs, and the like, on the patriarchy. You know, whenever something goes wrong, it's the man's fault, and it's the system, and it's all.
Ask, where is Mr. Right? Well, ladies, he may be hard to find because men are apparently going on strike, boycotting marriage, among many other things.
According to a recent study, the importance of marriage has gone up for the women, up to 37%, and down for men to 29%. Here to explain the trend is forensic psychologist and author of the controversial book Men on Strike. Dr. Helen Smith is here this morning. Doctor, nice to see you this morning.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having me on.
We were having a bit of a discussion about this last weekend on the show, and the argument is what? That men simply are giving up hope on marriage because they're feeling beaten down?
No, I don't think they're giving up on hope on marriage. I think what they're doing is they're looking at it, the cost reward. Men look at things in terms of cost analysis, and the penalties for marriage are so high and the rewards now are so low. First of all, there's legal costs of marriage. There are so many men now who are just saying, you know what, it's just not worth it to me. I'm going to be stuck paying the alimony. I'm going to be stuck paying for child support. And it's not just legal reasons. It's also psychological ones where men feel that basically they don't really have rights in marriage. Women hold all the cards now in reproduction and all kinds of...
It's great about marriage. And so you act as though marriage is such a raw deal for men, but you do get companionship and you get love and you get a family. And I see men enjoying all of that and embracing all of that.
That's a different topic. Those are also things that you can get with a relationship. We're talking about the legal aspect of marriage. I'm talking about the political and the legal ramifications of marriage, where men aren't getting such a good deal there. And there are thousands of men across the country that I've spoken to and that will tell you differently, and the statistics are bearing that out. A lot of men, you think men need to man up, but to man up you have to be getting something out of that relationship. What you're saying is that men are getting something just by having a woman. They're just so lucky.
Here's the thing. They're allowed. The one thing I agree with you on is men are getting away with having children without marrying the woman.
They're not getting away with it. What's happening is a lot of women, number one, don't want them. The lower level women, what's happening is 40% of the women who are breadwinners, a lot of those lower level women are making $17,000 to $23,000. Those women use the government to pay for themselves. They don't want a man. So rather than, some men are just opting.
Why hasn't a man written this book? Why hasn't a man written this book?
Because men can't speak up. I'm here to speak up because people will actually listen to a woman. It's really unfortunate. I want the next man, and I'm hoping by this book that next man is out there.
It's frustrating. Hold on, I want to say something as a man, because this always has frustrated me when I see commercials when men sort of speak up, they're acting like men, right? And all these commercials are out there where the man's like the lazy guy on the couch.
He's a tool.
But look what the culture is doing to the men. The culture is telling men, you are no good. You are no good in marriage. You are no good. Even you all are here saying man up to men, and that's a really negative message to be sending to men.
But what do you think the solution is?
The solution is for us to have fair laws and things for men, and to also, these commercials, we need to look at the culture and say, you know what, quit treating men like trash. Seriously, we treat men very poorly in this society, all the way from men who don't want to go to college anymore because there are many things in college that go on. It is a female-dominated place where men are not treated in a way that is fair. It's easy to sit here and say, as high-level men and women, that things are going well for you, but I've seen many men who are average, lower, and even higher-level men who aren't having such a good time. Yeah. And if you read my book, you might understand a little bit more about.
The book is called Men on Strike. It is compelling, and I think you make a compelling argument.
An awful lot of people are reading it.